Crash, chapters 13 through 18. You never know who's going to get home first. Tonight it was my mom. Before she even closed the front door, she kicked her shoes across the living room floor. She flopped onto an easy chair and melted into it. Legs straight out, heels on the rug, toes up, head back, eyes closed. Did you eat? Yeah, I said. Pizza. Mike was here. She didn't move. She looked dead. Abby came bursting in. Mommy! She threw the ruler she'd been using on the sofa and jumped onto the lap of the body. My mom grunted. Hey, you're not 3 anymore. When are you going to stop being so perky? Her eyes were still closed. Abby bounced on the lap. I have to be perky, Mom, because you're so tired all the time. I gotta make up for you. My mother's right eye opened for a second, then closed again. You'd be tired too if you hadn't sold a house since the pilgrims came over. My mother sells real estate. Abby made a face and pounded the arm of the chair. Oh no, not again. She pulled my mother's head onto her shoulder and hugged her like she was the mother. Why don't you sell me a house, Mom? I'll buy one from you. She reached into my mother's armpit and tickled. My mother screamed and shot upright and snatched Abby's hand away. Why can't you just go away and let me be miserable? She said, but she was chuckling and hugging Abby as she said it. Her eyes swung to me. How was your first day? I shrugged. Okay, Penn Webb is out for cheerleading. Her eyes widened. Penn Webb, the boy? If you want to call him that. He's nice, Abby butted in. I like him. For some reason, it bugs me how alike Webb and my sister are, especially with nature stuff. They go walking as turtle together. It shows you how immature he is, hanging out with a 5th grader. And they're both perky. My father walked in. If it was possible, he looked even draggier than my mother. Abby ran to him. Daddy, Daddy, I love you, Daddy. She put her arms around his waist and snuggled into his shirt. My father looked sideways at my mother. What does she want? My mother pushed herself up from the chair and shuffled off. She's just being perky, hungry. Don't worry about me, he said, letting Abby pull his briefcase away. I'll get something. My mother flapped her hand as she went into the kitchen. Well, I'm here now. Abby held the briefcase with both hands on her. It looked like a suitcase. Daddy, I do want something. I want to know how many square feet in an acre. My mother's voice sailed in from the kitchen. 43,560. The 3 of us gawked at the kitchen doorway. My mother's face appeared. Real estate school? And disappeared. Abby opened my dad's briefcase and got out his calculator. She punched some buttons on it and let out a yelp of joy. Yes! My father took back the calculator. What was that for? Abby clenched her fists. There were secrets in her eyes. Surprise, surprise! I went up to my room. Pretty soon I could smell frying onions. I went back down. The 3 of them were in the kitchen. My mother was making cheesesteaks. It's about the only thing she makes good. She scowled at me. You don't really want more to eat, do you? I didn't say anything. Didn't have to. She knew the answer. She put on another steak. I stuck a printed form in front of my dad. You got to sign this. Permission to play football. He read it. What if I don't give you permission? I'll play anyway. He pushed the paper away. I'll think about it. We've gone through this little joke every year since midget football. Eric Schultz says he's going to send me home crying, I said. My father nodded. Scared? Terrified. My mother served the steaks. Penn Webb's going out for cheerleading, I said. My dad is usually pretty cool, but this time his head jerked up like he got caught by an uppercut. What? Who? Penn Webb wants to be a cheerleader. He bit off the end of his sandwich. He shook his head, chewed, chuckled, and spoke all at once. Now that is terrifying. We, Dad and I, cracked up. Abby glared. And he gets his clothes that second time around, I said. That's no crime, said my mother. What's second time around, said Abby. A thrift shop, said my mother. It means, I said, used, like used clothes. He wears rags that other people throw away. My mother sprinkled pepper on her steak. She spoke to Abby. They are not rags. They're clothes that are still good that people donate to be sold. The proceeds go to the hospital. Abby licked off some melted cheese. Like recycled clothes? Exactly. Abby took a couple bites. She kept staring at my mom. You could tell she was chewing on more than steak. Mom, yes. Can I get my clothes that second time around from now on? My mother smiled. We'll see. I said, if he does make cheerleading, I hope he can find a used skirt there. My father gave a snort. The females glared. My mother turned to Abby. Speaking of gender issues, why did you ask your father about the number of square feet in an acre? Why not your mother? Abby had a yellow mustache from melted cheese. She looked stumped for a minute. I thought acres was man stuff. That kind of thinking, said your mother, pointing her finger, will make you a second class citizen. Abby thought it over. She does that. Me, if grown ups don't make sense, I forget it. Why bother? I said to my father, first game is October 8th. I should have stopped right there, but my mom blabbered on. Against Hillside East? Think you can make it? My father took a bite, took a sip of diet soda, blinked, sniffed, poured salt on a steak, cleared his throat, but he didn't speak. He nodded. I wanted to kill myself. Why did I have to put him through that? All I had to do was mention the date, let it go at that. I punched myself under the table. Abby was done thinking it over. She snapped her head and said, okay, Mom. So can I have a stamp, an envelope, and a piece of paper? Ask your father, she said. He's the stamp, envelope, and paper person. Abby giggled and threw up her arms. I give up. I'll never figure out this gender business. Even I had to laugh. I don't know how long we were there after the plates were empty. As I was getting up to go, Abby says, notice anything? We all looked at her. I sure wasn't going to say it. My mother did. What? Abby raised her arms and swung around with a grin as big as a hoagie roll. We all ate a meal together. I headed off. The living room was getting dark. I twirled my finger. Whoopee, just like a real family. Chapter 14. First day of practice. I couldn't wait to put the pads on, but first we had business with Webb. Yesterday, Mike said to me, do you believe we've been in school this long and didn't do anything to him yet? I nodded. It's unbelievable. It's a disgrace. We got to do something before he starts thinking he's safe. Tomorrow. All last year we tormented Webb. Mostly little stuff like messing with his locker or his clothes or his books. Like something would be missing. Then mysteriously show up the next day or week. Or he would wonder why everybody was pinching him until he discovered the pinch me sign on the back of his shirt. He's so dumb. He never figures out who's doing it. He never gets mad at us. In fact, he never gets mad at anybody. Day after day, his chippy, chirpy, perky self. What a moron. So we thought about it yesterday and did it today. In last period geography, Mike brought the mustard in from one of those squeeze dispensers. He slipped it to me before class. I had the seat behind Webb. Mike went to work as soon as Webb came in. Today's button read, hug a tree. How you doing, Spider? What's up, dude? Giving him the dipsy doodle handshake, loosening him up. That's how we wanted him, loose, relaxed, because this year we notice he has a new routine. Lots of times, right in class, he makes himself at home and pries off his sneakers. He didn't have to wait long. About 10 minutes into class, off comes the right sneaker. Mike nods. I take out the mustard, shake it, lean it down, give it a good long shot right into that baby. Before I had a chance to straighten up, off comes the other supermarket beauty. Squirt, squirt, like it was a foot-long hot dog. From then on, every other minute I would duck down. Squirt, squirt. In between my duties, I noticed that today's subject was erosion. I even heard the teacher mention the wind in North Dakota. I kept squirting till the spout blew yellow bubbles. Then I unscrewed the top, reached in with the eraser end of my pencil, scooped out the rest of the mustard, and painted the sneaker, tongues, and laces. The class was ending. We watched as Webb's white socks started feeling for the sneakers. They found them. They started to slip in. They stopped. The bell rang. We barely made it out the door before we cracked up. We went down the hallways and waited for him to come out. He was the last one. He just came out and walked on up the hall like nothing ever happened, except his socks were now yellow and the supermarket beauties were in his hand. If laughing was hazardous to your health, I'd be in intensive care right now. Chapter 15. I love the way I look in shoulder pads. I mean, I'm big to start with, and when I put those on, it's like I'm as wide as a bus. DeLuca caught me looking in the locker room mirror. Keep looking, man. You're still ugly. I ain't ugly. I'm scary. I'm scaring myself, I shrugged. My shoulders moved like small mountains. That's what I'm saying. You're so ugly, you're scary. You're going to score a touchdown every time you get the ball because nobody's going to want to touch you. At least I don't smell like you, I said. Other teams get a whiff of you, they'll all faint and we'll win by forfeit. You're so ugly. When you were born, the doctor smacked your face instead of your butt. Yeah. By now, we were walking across the parking lot to the football field. We had our helmets on. I shoved him. He shoved me. I punched him. He punched me. Yeah. We plowed into each other, colliding shoulder pads. We butted helmets like bighorn sheep. We grunted. We growled. We weren't really mad at each other. It was all just part of football. Football, see, is a violent and emotional game. The more charged up you are, the better you play. It had been almost a year since we popped somebody. We kept smashing pads and butting helmets. We were ready to kill each other. And then along came Schultz. He walked right between Mike and me, pushing us apart with his hands and saying, "Excuse me, girls." I was on him like cheese on pizza. We went to the ground. I threw some punches, but all I got were sore knuckles from bouncing off his helmet. It was like fighting a clam. Then the coaches pulled us apart. They were laughing. The line coach said, "I'd hate to be Hillside East having to face you terrors." Coach Latner said, "Guess we better get started while somebody's still alive." He blew the whistle. "Football team, 4 laps, go." Football season was officially started. I ran alongside Mike as we jogged around near the school. The cheerleaders were coming out. There was a ton of them. Nobody had been cut yet. 2 of them were on the water fountain outside the gym door. Webb and Jane Forbes. She was helping him wash out his sneakers. Chapter 16. On the way home, we talked about it. I couldn't believe it, I said. "It looks like she likes him," said Mike. I screeched. "Likes him? You're crazy. No girl would like that Oatburger." Mike grinned. "You're just jealous because you like her." I laughed. "Me? You're crazier than crazy. Why would I like that stuck-up bimbo?" I laughed some more. As usual, we ordered pizza from my house. My mother told me from now on I had to ask Abby if she wanted pizza too. As usual, she was in the backyard. She wanted some. I ordered 2 mediums to cover the 3 of us, both with pepperoni. When they came, Abby took 3 slices and started picking off the pepperonis. "What are you doing?" I said. She was stacking up the pepperonis like quarters on her plate. "I'm a vegetarian." "Since when?" Mike sneered. "Since she started hanging out with little Miss Webb." She looked at me all snooty. "I do not devour anything that has a face." "She's even starting to sound like him," Mike blubbered with his mouth full. "She's getting weirder by the minute." "I never saw a pepperoni with a face," I said. "What do you think? There's little herds of running around the ranch?" "No," said Mike. "They're not ranch animals. They're wild. You go hunting for them in the woods." I jumped in, but only during pepperoni hunting season, right? Or else you're a pepperoni poacher. We cracked up. Mike made like a rifleman. "You got to get him with the first shot, right?" I howled. "Because there's nothing more dangerous than a wounded bull pepperoni." Bang went Mike. By now we were rolling on the floor. Abby glared at us. "And after we shoot the wild pepperoni," I sputtered, "we eat it." I reached up to my sister's plate, grabbed a stack of pepperoni slices, and shoved them in my mouth. Like this. Abby got up. "You're disgusting." She took her plate outside. A couple of minutes later, we were eating our pizza in peace when Mike suddenly looks past me and says, "What's that?" "What?" I said. He pointed. I saw something move, like go behind the refrigerator. I looked. Probably a bug. I just hoped it wasn't a roach. We went back to eating, and 10 seconds later, Mike jumps right out of his seat. "Yo!" I whirled around, saw nothing. "It ain't no bug, man, unless it's King Kong bug." All of a sudden, I wasn't hungry. I felt a little cold. "Where'd it go?" I said. "There." He was pointing to the corner of the kitchen. "The wastebasket." "Yeah, behind it, I think, or under it. I'll tell you one thing, man." "What?" My voice wasn't working right. "It's fast." I pulled my feet up to the rung of the chair. Mike grabbed the broom. He stalked over toward the wastebasket, holding the broom handle out like a sword. "What are you going to do?" I said. "Flush him out." "You sure you want to do that?" "Yeah." We were whispering. He poked the basket. Nothing happened, except me scrunching up a little tighter. He poked again. Nothing. "I think it's gone," I said. He went on poking, and then with the tip of the broom handle, shoved the basket away, and out it came. He was right. It was fast. a gray blur across the kitchen floor. And then I was looking down at Abby, way down. Why was she so short? And she was looking straight up at me, her eyes wide, panting, saying, "What happened? Huh? What are you screaming about? Who's screaming? What are you doing up there? If Mommy knew you were on the kitchen table." I looked at my feet. She was right. I was standing on the kitchen table. "How could that be?" I heard Mike's voice. "A mouse!" Abby clapped. "Wow, where?" "Mouse. My butt," I said. "That was a rat." I lowered myself to a seat on the edge of the table. My feet stayed on the floor. Mike held his fingers a couple of inches apart. "It was a mouse," Abby sneered. "My big brave brother, Crash Coogan, is afraid of mice." I could have killed her. "Not afraid. Don't like. I just don't like them. There's a difference." Now, nobody was listening. Abby was all over Mike. "So, come on. Where'd it go?" Mike nodded toward the dining room. "In there." Abby was through the doorway quicker than a rodent. Chapter 17. She was still searching when Mike left. She didn't stop until my father came home. As he closed the door behind him, she mouthed silently to me. "Don't tell. There's a rodent loose in the house," I told him. "Might even be a rat." Abby threw her ugliest face at me. "It's a mouse." My father frowned. "Just what I need. You saw it?" "Yeah, in the kitchen. Ran in here somewhere." He looked around as if he thought it was going to come out and take a bow. Abby ran up the stairs. She let out a long breath. "Well, tell your mother to get a trap." "Better get more than one," I said. He nodded. The front door opened. My mother was home. She heard my father say, "We have a mouse." She sagged, just like he had when I told him. I notice that sag a lot. It almost always happens when they come home from work. I'll say something, or Abby will, and they sag. It's a total major sag. Cheeks, shoulders, even voice, except the eyeballs. They roll upward. It's like they've just barely been making it through the day, and they finally get home, and one little word from us. Sometimes it's just a question, like, "Do you know where my frisbee is?" And bam, they're crushed. Sag City. Sometimes I wish we could turn the day upside down so that their main time at home would be in the morning, before they all get worn out. At the end of the day, it doesn't take much to crush a parent. My mother sighed. "Get a trap." "Me," said my father. "You're the male. You're supposed to be the hunter." She sagged toward the kitchen. She stopped. She pointed down at my football laundry bag. "No, no what?" I said. She was still looking and pointing down. "You know what? All last year you kept leaving that smelly thing here. It's not going to happen this year. Not even once. Pick it up. Get it out of here." I guess I didn't move fast enough. "Now." "All right." I snatched it up. "Thank you," she said, and dragged herself off. I followed my dad into his office. It's a little room in the back. Sometimes he goes right on working there half the night. "Remember that kid Schultz I told you about? Said he was going to bust me?" He took stuff from his briefcase. "Did he?" I sneered. "Ha! We had a fight before practice even started. They had to pull us apart. And I got him good later. We ran some drills, and twice I plowed him into the ground. I was awesome." He looked up. He laughed. He reached out and mussed my hair. "That's my crash." I kind of felt like sticking around, but I figured I'd better not press my luck. I backed on out. "Can't wait for the first game," I said. "October 8th. "Go get him, Crasher," he said. He was rooting in his desk. I lugged my football bag upstairs. Our upper hallway is different from most people's. It's like an art gallery. My mother used to be a painter. Some of her paintings are hanging on the walls behind the bedrooms. One of the paintings is me. You'd never know it because I was less than a year old when she did it. I'm lying on my stomach with a diaper on, looking up with this toothless grin, probably already thinking, what am I going to do when I get my first football helmet? It's a stupid picture, actually. Something like that should be kept private. Everybody who sees it laughs. I usually don't even look at it. This time I did. On the glass that covered it, some mysterious unknown person had crammed a mustache right above my toothless grin. I put spit on my finger and rubbed it off. Chapter 18. We creamed Hillside East 45-13. I scored 6 touchdowns. The first one was the best. It was the first play of the game. Brill, the quarterback, called I-22 right. That means he hands off to me, and I run over the right tackle, which was fine with me because right tackle is where Mike DeLuca plays on offense. Coming out of the huddle, Mike bumps me and says, "Let's do it." Usually, a simple, safe play like this is supposed to get the team's feet wet, maybe gain a couple yards. That's probably all Brill had in mind. He doesn't know me and Mike. I took the handoff, slanted right, kept my head up, watching for the hole. There it was. Mike was shoveling the hillside tackle halfway to China. I blasted through, and there was the hillside linebacker. Somebody was supposed to pick him up, but nobody did. I stiff armed him. The stiff arm almost always works early in the game. Players don't expect it. Most runners never use it. I hit him smack in the face mask with the heel of my hand. His eyes went gaga. His head snapped back. I was clear for a second. Somebody had a hold of my free hand, the one without the ball. I started swinging around, spinning with my arm out, trying to shake the kid. He was whirling around like a carnival ride. On the third spin, he went flying off into two of his teammates. Now there was nothing between me and the goal line but the safety. I love safeties. They're usually small and fast and shifty. They expect you to try to outrun or outjuke them. I swear, I almost burst out laughing right there when I saw the safety's face as he realized I wasn't going left. I wasn't going right. I was coming straight at him, like there was a bullseye on his nose. I plowed him under and streaked the last 40 yards to pay dirt. My own teammates almost killed me in the end zone, mobbing me, burying me under the pile of bodies like they never saw a touchdown before. They carried me off the field on their shoulders. The ride was bumpy, but the view was great. The cheerleaders were going crazy, including Webb. That's right, the happy little surprise made it. He's a cheerleader. Same sweater and shoes as the girls. At least he didn't have to have a skirt on. It was one of the eeriest and uncomfortablest feelings I ever had, watching a boy lead cheers for me. Of course, the stands were going wild, too. I looked for my father, or even my mother. What the heck? Couldn't see either of them. Well, after all, the game just started. Maybe they're on their way, or maybe I miss them in the crowd. As I waded through all the pad slapping and high-fiving, I took another look at the stands. Still didn't see them, but I did see somebody else, about halfway up. A white-haired guy and a semi-old lady smiling, clapping with the rest of them. Webb's prehistoric parents. My second touchdown was a 52-yarder on a pitch out from Brill. This time there wasn't nobody in the way to run over. I just left them all in the dust. The place went wild again. This time I made them let me leave the field on my own feet. Webb's parents were still smiling and clapping. Mine weren't there. Okay, I figured, they're late. Give them time. They're coming. All you got to do is keep scoring. That's what I did. I either scored or made a long gain every time I touched the ball. I had to. Suppose they came just when I got stopped for a no game. I couldn't stand it. And since I didn't know exactly when they would show up, I had to be great every second. I kept telling Brill, give me the ball. I scored my fifth TD just before the first half ended. They still weren't there. They're probably coming for the second half, I figured. They didn't. TD number 6 came early in the third quarter. As I trotted to the sideline, I kept staring at the stands. Not for my parents anymore, but at Webb's. They were still there, grinning and clapping themselves silly. I wanted to charge up there and strangle them. I wanted to shake their skinny vegetarian necks and scream into their Quaker faces. Stop cheering for me. I don't need your cheers. I'm not doing this for you, so stop acting so damn grateful. When we went on offense again, I raced back onto the field. As I was leaning into the huddle, I felt a tap. I turned. It was my backup. I'm in for you, he said. That's what you think, I said. I shoved him. He stumbled backward onto his second-string butt. I heard Coach Latner scream from the sideline. The quarterback called to the referee. Timeout. For the first time, I noticed it wasn't Brill. It was the second-string quarterback. The coach was calling me. He was waving for me to come out. I pretended I didn't see or hear. Then he came stomping across the field. He pulled me away from the other players. I'm not going to drag you off, he whispered. You're going to trot off along with me. Understand? I glanced at the stands. You can't take me out. I'm just getting warmed up. I'm here to beat Hillside, he said, not destroy them. You're the only first stringer left on the field, and you're already benched for the first quarter of our next game. He leaned sideways into my face. Want to try for the second quarter? He started trotting for the sideline. I went with him. The kids in the stands jumped up and gave me a standing ovation. Everybody was cheering. My name came hooting down. Coogan, Coogan, except one cheerleader, Jane Forbes. She just stood there behind the bench, hands on hips, glaring at me. After the game, Mike had to go straight home, so I walked alone. When I came to my house, I walked past it. I went around the block slow, twice. Somebody was cooking somewhere. Whenever I smell cooking like that, it makes me want to go right into that house and eat along with them. But I can never tell which house it's coming from. Only one thing for sure, it's not coming from my house. That's why I was so shocked when I finally opened the front door. The smell was coming from my house, and that made no sense at all. My mom's car wasn't in the driveway, and Abby isn't allowed to use the stove. I shut the door real quiet. I got a good grip on my football bag. I tiptoed through the living room and the dining room. A suitcase sat on the floor. Something was sizzling in a pan, and it was smelling awful good. Somebody was whistling a tune. He was facing the stove. He must have heard me. He turned, a spatula in his hand. I screeched, "Scooter!" It's the end of chapter 18. So, in the packet, on the last page of the packet, chapters 9 through 18, comprehension questions. Your questions are, what does Crash think about wearing clothes from a thrift shop? What tends to be a lunchroom fight, or what leads, to the lunchroom fight between Crash and Mike? Why is Crash shocked when he sees who is going out for cheerleading? How is Abby different from her brother Crash? How do Crash and Mike bully Penn? Why does Abby refuse to eat pepperoni? How do Crash's parents act when they come home from work? Why does Jane Forbes glare at Crash during the football game? So, along with that and the vocabulary words I read on the first video, that is your work for the next section in the book.